So Dave, did you see the new Unearthed Arcana that dropped?
Yeah, that thing is freaking huge. There's options for all of the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons character classes in it.
So viewers out there, sit back, relax, grab your popcorns and drinks. This is going to be a long one.
Join us as we do a 5e D&D character class variants Unearthed Arcana review. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
Baby, this is the first time visiting Ted's basement. It's a place where we like to discuss news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes we even talk about other role-playing games.
So if you don't want to miss a single video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to tune to that notification bell.
Folks, we got about 3 hours of content for you. Get ready. Now, we're going to try and condense it and get through it, but there's a lot going on with this UA. I'm going to grab my phone so I can check it out. It's not on D&D Beyond yet, but you can go download it at the Wizards site, and we'll put links in the description for that.
Normally, we do a whole read through and review each and every piece. This is 13 pages worth of material. There's just too much to do every line by line. So we're going to kind of break it down, break it apart, and review it in a different way than our normal style of videos.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap and stuff anyway, so there's no need to regurgitate all that. So we're going to get through it and give our thoughts and how we feel about it. But before we do, we want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, The Deck of Many. Humblewood is this amazing campaign setting that they kickstarted for over $1 million. You can go over on their site and you can pre-order it now. They got tons of other stuff over there that's amazing, all kinds of decks of cards. But right now we have a promo code for you folks for $5 off your order with the promo code Nerdarchy.
I've been a big fan of Deck of Many for a while. We've got their decks to add to the game, adds to the enjoyment. I backed the Humblewood Kickstarter. They've got a lot of great stuff that's coming out for there, and I am certain that they've got more and more content to come, so check them out.
All right, let's jump back into it, and we're going to discuss this Unearthed Arcana. I've got it open here, and we've got some kind of like bullet points going on. It breaks down into two different categories, replacements and enhancements. Most of them are on the enhancement side. There is a couple replacements. So where do you want to start, Ted?
So the enhancements are just, it adds new options to what is already there. The replacements are things where it's like you are going to just cut out the whole section that you had before and you're going to fit this in. So why don't we talk about the easier portion, and that's the more options with the enhancements.
So the very first one we get is for everybody. When you get a stat adjustment, you can now swap out a skill. You can get rid of one you had and trade it for another one as long as it's on your character class list. Bam, you forget how to be a blacksmith, and now you know how to bake bread or whatever the swap is. But you made a choice, you don't like it, you're finding you're not using those skills, you can switch up your character now. So
I think the fun part is it takes in the whole idea of what your character is mentally focusing on. So when, let's say you gain 4th level in cleric and you were a criminal before, you really are not using stealth, you have no need of it anymore. You could get rid of stealth and replace that with, say, knowledge religion or something off of your cleric list. Makes it very easy to hone in on the things that you're going to do and more tailor your character for the game that you're in, because when you created it, you might not have known what the DM had in store for you.
Interesting enough, the rogue and the fighter are going to benefit the most from these because they get extra ability stat adjustments that they can choose from, so they're going to be able to do this more often than anybody else. And actually the fighter is the most versatile, so they can do it the most.
But how many times are you honestly going to want to change out a skill? I think maybe over the course of a game, 1 maybe 2 times tops.
Also, the fighter gets the least amount of skills, so they can literally change their whole list.
There is that option as well.
All right, so there's a couple areas where there's lots of crossover, so we might as well jump into some of those.
So next we're going to look at, across your primary casters, all of them get some access to spell versatility, whether it be you can, for your divine casters like cleric and druid, being able to swap out your cantrips, or it be for your arcane casters who have got the ability to swap out spells whenever you finish a long rest. You get this change so that you can be better prepared for your day.
Yeah, pretty much everyone when they gain a level now, can swap out a cantrip. Right, so that wasn't something that was done before. And then spell versatility, what that does, all the classes that get that is after a long rest, they can swap one spell. Now it's spell versatility. Your casters that have spells known, after a long rest, they can swap out one of those spells for something different on their list. So they're not like pigeonholed the way they used to be. It's going to give them a little bit more flexibility. They're kind of nudging into the wizard's territory a little bit.
So this one, I'm certain, is going to have some mixed emotions, and it's certainly going to be up for debate. Some people are going to love the fact, oh well, I've got a warlock, I've got so limited spells, or I'm a sorcerer, I've got such limited spells. I want to go in a different direction, but I really don't have a whole lot of options. So some people are going to love this, some people are going to hate it. As with all of this stuff, it's going to be completely up to you as to what you're going to allow at your table, whether you like these options, whether you don't.
Now, the last thing when it comes to casters is pretty much everyone has gotten new spells put on their spell list. I'm not quite sure why, but they're expanding everyone's spell list as an option. It just makes me kind of wonder a little bit is when do we get to the point where it's like no one has a spell list, just pick the spells you want. Doesn't matter what class you are.
I don't think it's ever quite going to get there. I'm not as against adding more spells to the list. I like it more when it's set by subclass as opposed to by the generic, but some of the options that are in there I think definitely fit the theme of that particular class without too much problems. So
the one area where I have the there where I do kind of have a beef is with paladin spells. One of the things I loved about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is there's a ton of spells that are paladin spells and ranger spells, and when you read the name of that spell, you just know who that spell belongs to. And it's like, I think like the smites should belong to the paladin, and certain subclasses should get access to them, but like everyone gets a certain amount of them now. And I kind of liked where some of the spells just felt really thematic towards particular classes, and it felt like that was their home turf, their home territory.
And I completely agree with that. And that's where I will agree and say that yes, things should remain. But again, this is where you get to go through and, chop apart and say, okay, I'm going to allow this, I'm not going to allow that.
All right, so I think the next area where we have a lot of crossover is fighting styles. And some really interesting things here. We actually get a bunch of new fighting styles.
So we get a total of 7 fighting styles, and we actually have 2 of them that cannot actually be achieved by the fighter.
They can't be achieved by the fighter, and they don't actually make you any better at fighting.
Which I think is amusing, the fact that it's called a fighting style. Those 2, the paladin gets access to a style that gives him 2 cleric cantrips.
Blessed Warrior.
The ranger gets druidic warrior. So these are, fun and interesting, that they're going to definitely allow you to fight differently. I think the paladin is going to have, less use here. Now, maybe you want to take Sacred Flame and now that's your only ranged attack. Okay, that kind of works for me. I can definitely see the ranger using, Thorn Whip. Definitely a fun druid cantrip. So...
But being those classes are so martial, now great for flavor if you want to do it, it's great. It's an awesome option. But I feel like it's definitely not an optimized option for those particular classes. But you can flavor it however you want. Now, fighting style options, I got them pulled up. We get blind fighting, interception, thrown weapon fighting, unarmed fighting. So basically, blind fighting, being unable to see a creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls against it, provided it isn't hidden from you. So as long as they don't stealth, just being invisible is not enough. Interception, when a creature hits a target that's within 5 feet of you with an attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage to the target. So it takes die 10 plus your proficiency bonus, less minimum of 0.
Yeah, you're not allowed to heal off of it.
Yeah, you can't heal off of it. You have to have a shield or a martial weapon handy. It requires a reaction. Thrown weapon fighting, very excited about this one. We needed this. Maybe Watts has heard us bitching about it enough. Thrown weapon fighting. Draw a weapon that has a thrown property as part of the attack you make with it, so you're not limited now. It's for a number of attacks you can do. In addition, when you hit with a ranged attack using a thrown weapon, you gain a +1 bonus to the damage roll, which is fine because generally thrown weapons are going to do less damage anyway. So, and it also gives us like a strength, a strength version of a ranged combatant as well. So I love that. Now here, I do have a little bit of a beef with the last one. It's
superior technique.
No, that's another one we have to mention. Unarmed fighting.
Oh yeah, I actually have a problem with this one as well.
Your unarmed strikes deal bludgeoning damage equal to a die 6 plus your strength modifier. If you strike with 2 free hands, the die 6 becomes a die. Captain Kirk style. When you successfully start a grapple, you can deal a die 4 bludgeoning damage to the grappled creature until the grapple ends. You can also deal this damage to the creature whenever you hit with a melee attack. My problem is you're better than the monk for a while.
Yeah, so I would say this is allowed. It's a D4, which, even when you're grappled, it's a D4. There's no two-handed options. It is really unwieldy to try and hammer blow somebody. It's easier to miss. Okay, you want to do an extra, a higher die to do a hammer blow, you're going to get disadvantage on the attack roll. That's where I'll go with it if you really want to push on it.
Now, I would like to see this one reworked a little bit, and for them to figure out the medium ground between not taking away from the monk, but yet offering, other classes this is an option. And frankly, the class I would love to see this for an option the most doesn't get a fighting style.
The barbarian.
The barbarian.
I like the theme. I like the concept of what it's here, but the monk starts off at a D4. Those who excel at, hand-to-hand combat should not be surpassed by a level 1 fighter. I'm sorry, it's just wrong. I think that is probably one of the highest complaints that I have, now, specifically in the fighting styles.
Now, that being said, the monk can flurry of blows. They can make offhand attacks. And they could technically benefit from this feat too, and it would be good for this fighting style. It would be good for them up until a high level, and then once they got to the point, they'd always benefit from the die 4 crushing damage. But I suppose after they get to a high enough level, because one of the things you can do is swap out your fighting styles. Is if you were to take another level in a class to give you fighting styles, then you could ditch this when you hit like 10th level or whatever it is when the monk is doing this much damage. So there is that kind of to be said for it, but this one might need a little bit of tweaking and massaging.
I would agree. Now, the fighter-only option is superior technique, and this is something that I really wasn't looking for, but I really love this one. You learn one maneuver of your choice from those among available to the Battlemaster archetype. If a maneuver you use requires your target to make a saving throw to resist the effect, the DC is 8 plus your proficiency modifier plus strength or dex, your choice. You gain 1 superiority die, which is a D6, which is added to any superiority dice you have from another source. The die is used to fuel your maneuvers. The superior die is expended when you use it. You regain your expended superiority dice when you finish a short or long rest. So literally, as a first level fighter, if you go human, you could take the feat, you could take this fighting style, and you've already got 2 dice and a handful of maneuvers that you could play with, and really get into the bread and butter of your character right from go, which I love.
You would get 3 maneuvers. For oddly enough, this only gives you 1 maneuver instead of 2, like Martial Adept. Mm-hmm. But that being said, it also adds in the feature of after a long rest, you can change out your battle maneuvers, so you can switch them up. And speaking of battle maneuvers, we get a bunch of new ones.
Oh, we do indeed.
And a bunch of them actually aren't, they don't have combat uses. They're more skill heavy.
So we have ambush, bait and switch, brace, restraining strike, silver tongue, because that's all about fighting, right? Snipe, and studious eye. So a lot of fun things that are here. Snipe is, as a bonus action, you can expend 1 superiority die and make a ranged weapon attack. You can draw a thrown weapon as part of making this attack. If you hit, add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. Studious eye, when you make a wisdom insight check or an intelligence investigation check, you can expend 1 die and add the superiority die to your ability check. Silver tongue, when you make a charisma deception check or a charisma persuasion check, you can expend 1 die and add the result to your ability check. Restraining strike, immediately after you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack on your turn, you can expend 1 die and use a bonus action to grapple the target. Add the superiority die to your strength athletics check. The target is also restrained while grappled in this way. Pretty nice.
Also would pair nicely with that unarmed fighting style.
Indeed. Brace. When an enemy you can see moves within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to expend 1 superiority die and make 1 weapon attack against the creature. If the attack hits, add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. I really like that one. Bait and switch. This one is really useful in, clutch situations. When you're within 5 feet of an ally on your turn, you can expend 1 superiority die and switch places with that ally, provided you spend at least 5 feet of movement. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. Roll a superiority die until the start of your next turn. The ally gains a bonus to AC equal to the number rolled. So if you're a cleric or a spellcaster or somebody who's been, damaged or, just needs to be out of combat, is, on that threshold, you can expend your die, pull him behind you, step in front. They now have an increased armor class, and you're in that, in that spot.
What about breaking grapples or grabs that way?
Oh.
Or, if you're in a creature's mouth, within 5 feet, because it doesn't really specify. I mean, it would be the call of the DM, but it might be fun and interesting, and I might allow a player to do it.
So, that would be interesting to do it if somebody's grappled. I'd have to think long and hard on that one.
And you slide them out and slide yourself in. And finally, we have ambush. When you make a dexterity stealth check or an initiative roll, you expend the superiority die and add that die to the roll. So you get a lot of interesting options. We can now sleep on it and choose different options, swap them all out. That might be why that superior technique only gives you 1, because you can change them every day if you needed to, if you're using these variant rules in your game.
So next up, the Paladin and the Cleric have a new Channel Divinity that essentially allows you to swap out your Channel Divinity as an action for a first level spell slot to be restored.
Not super impressive for your channel. Maybe it works better for the Paladin, because you're like, well, that's a 2d8 smite. But for the Cleric, I'm like, depending on what you really are trading. But in a clutch situation, maybe you really needed that.
Having played, I got a 20th level Cleric in your game. There are times where those Channel Divinities just, they don't get used. So there's a lot of times I'm like, yeah, I'll take an extra spell slot, sure.
You're probably not, at those levels, though, you're probably not running out of first level spell slots, though.
Right, but you might need the extra healing where your Channel Divinities, if they're not being used, it's like, all right, off they go. If I'm not fighting undead and I don't have the ability to, need to use a tool, well, I guess I really don't need these.
So, of them all, that one was kind of meh. It's a thing that happened. So now we're kind of going through the classes, right? And we have Bard to get magical inspiration, which is cool. It just means your inspiration die, when someone uses it, a spellcaster can now use it to fuel their spells to do more healing or more damage.
Yeah, I like the fact that it also allows for that healing. It's not just damage, so I'm for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be super useful. So, I'm sure you're going to get more bang for your buck, and it just gives you another way to use it.
I would agree.
Next up, we've got Cleric and Blessed Strike.
So in battle, you're blessed with Divine Might. When a creature takes damage from one of your spells or weapon attacks, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to that creature. Once you deal this damage, you can't use this feature again until you start your next turn. So this is actually a replacement for their 8th level ability as opposed to an enhancement.
Right, so if you're talking about replacing weapon attacks, you're probably not going to do it, because you end up doing more, getting 2d8 eventually. But you know what, Potent Caster, this is a no-brainer, really.
Well, I mean, you're trading out your spellcasting modifier for a die 8.
Yeah, except for that die 8's on all your spells.
That's true.
Which is, big difference over just
cantrips.
Just cantrips. So next up, we're going to move on to Druid. And Druid is, what they get is an enhancement, and it enhances their wild shape. It is Wild Companion. Essentially, instead of wild shaping, they can cast Find Familiar, and it lasts the same duration that their wild shape would normally last. Is it a great use of your wild shape? Probably not, but it is an interesting use where maybe you need a spy or something, and more so than you wanting to be there in person. So it just gives you an option. Fortunately, you get your wild shapes back on a short rest, so it might not be that big of a deal to do it. You can do it or not do it.
So I think for your non-moon druids, I think this is a great option. And it's an enhancement. It's something that, it's not like, oh, you can't wild shape anymore. You can choose to use this or not. So I have no problems with this one.
All right, next up we have Monk. Things get a little wild and crazy here, in my opinion.
All right,
So Monk weapons.
So I actually had listened to over on D&D Beyond Jeremy Crawford's whole take on this whole monk thing. So it was pretty amusing.
All right. So you can use this feature to find your monk weapons rather than using definition in martial arts. You practice your martial arts with specially chosen weapons which become monk weapons for you. You can choose a number of weapons to be your monk weapons equal to 5 plus your wisdom modifier, minimum of 5 weapons. The chosen weapons must each meet the following criteria. The weapon must be a simple or martial weapon. You must be proficient with the weapon, and the weapon must lack these properties: heavy, special, or two-handed, which means thrown weapons is now something that we could use, as well as light, finesse, and a bunch of other things. But you can throw shurikens now.
Yes, which makes a lot of sense. Now, what I find most confusing here is it says that you can define what things are your monk weapons, which are what you would get proficiency with out of the book. But then it says down under the weapons must meet the criteria of.
I can explain that.
Go for it.
It's not changing the proficiencies you get as a monk, but what it's saying is it's redefining what is considered a monk weapon for you.
Okay.
So if you were a fighter first and you have all weapons that you're proficient with, now you're proficient with all weapons, and any of them can become your monk weapons. And monk weapons are very specific because you get to use your martial arts through them. You get to use your martial arts die and that kind of stuff. So you could throw shurikens and eventually do like a die 10 with them.
Nice. Okay. All right. That does make a lot of sense. I was a little unclear about that aspect.
Like, there's a weirdness to it, and I also kind of like it.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it does give you a chance to switch it up and see what you can do. Like, I haven't gone over all the weapons to figure it out. Like, oh, can I use a whip? I know it's a light and finesse weapon, but I don't know if it has a special property to it or not. So there's things like that you can change. And, it is kind of cool because there are a lot of traditional martial arts weapons that the monk doesn't actually get access to. So that's kind of cool.
So next we have Kai Fueled Strike, 2nd level monk feature, enhances your ki. If you spend 1 ki or more as part of your action on your turn, you can then immediately make 1 unarmed strike as a bonus action. So I was a little confused with this one at first.
But the video...
the video, when Jeremy Crawford explained it all, I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
It makes the way of the 4 elements monks suck a little less.
Because you still have to spend the key, and then I gotta spend another one to get my bonus attack off. Because I'm like, well, we can already get a flurry of blows that gets you 2 attacks.
No. If you spend 1 key or more as part of your action. So if you cast a spell or use a spell-like ability from way of the 4 elements, you've spent the key points. Now you can use your bonus action. You can fireball someone and then punch them in the face.
Okay, that's cool. So it's not costing you any more key. It's if you spend key, you get to do this.
And there's other monks that also get to do different things, like the Way of the Shadow as well. Yeah. Basically, could cast spells using their key points. So it's kind of a cool thing. I like that one.
Yeah, I'm totally down for it. But you also get other enhancements for your key features. You get Distant Eye. When you make a ranged weapon attack, you can spend 1 key point to prevent attacking at long range, so you don't get disadvantage. You
could be really badass with those shurikens now.
Yes.
Those darts. Dart monk, here I come.
Now here's one where I find that the monk is going to be able to start regenerating. Quickened Healing. As an action, you can spend 2 key points and roll a martial arts die. You regain a number of hit points equal to the number rolled. So monks get their key points back in 10 minutes, half hour, somewhere in that.
30 minutes meditating.
30 minutes meditating. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to use all my ki, heal myself, get them back, heal myself some more. I don't have a need for hit dice anymore.
It is heroics, the hit dice. It is definitely a benefit of it, and it's a little bit weird, but whatever. I'm digging on it. So we covered all the paladin stuff already. Next, we move into Ranger. Oh, there's so much to go over here on the Ranger. You know, it takes Ranger from being one of the classes that struggles a little bit to making it one of the best classes in the game with these variants. They fix a lot of the problems with the Ranger. A lot of areas where it relies on the DM to kind of make your Ranger cool. Here, no DM necessary. They're just going to be cool. Starting at level 1 with Deaf Explorer. I am very concerned about these Ranger enhancements for the level dip.
So I would agree with that because level 1, you're getting, canny. Sorry, you get to choose whether you want canny, roving, or tireless.
And you get these at 1st, 6th, and 10th level, and this is going to replace Nature's Explorer.
So canny is choose one skill: animal handling, athletics, history, insight, investigation, medicine, nature, perception, stealth, or survival. You gain proficiency in the skill. And if you don't already have it, and you can add your double proficiency, so it's essentially expertise here. And thanks to your extensive wandering, you're able to speak, read, and write 2 additional languages of your choice.
I really like this a lot because it really does double down on the Ranger also being a skill-based character. And you're getting the extra skill, getting expertise, and then getting a couple languages on top of that. It's really nice if you wanted to go with a not exclusively combat type ability.
Right. I feel getting an extra skill is awesome. Getting finally something in the Ranger area that's expertise really makes sense because if you go back to, the early days, if you go to like Strider, Rangers were supposed to be this thing that's up here. You needed to be really awesome to be one. And realistically, before this, Ranger was the weakest choice.
Well, or it just automatically happened, so it doesn't feel like it's coming up in the game and it's getting highlighted.
Right.
Because the way Natural's Explorer happened before, it was just kind of happened, and this feels more proactive, more active that the Ranger's doing a thing. And
I would agree.
Cool. So roving next.
Roving, your walking speed increases by 5, and you gain a climbing speed and a swimming speed equal to your walking speed. Holy crap!
Wood Elf Rangers all the way. Boom! You're going to be fast. This is a great one. That swim speed is a big deal if you ever engage in underwater combat. That determines whether or not you have disadvantage on pretty much everything or not. So yeah, that's great.
So that is super huge. And
the next one is problematic in my opinion.
Tireless. Oh my god, it's crazy. As an action, you can give yourself a number of temporary hit points equal to 1 die 10 plus your wisdom modifier. You can use this special action a number of times equal to your wisdom mod, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. In addition, whenever you finish a short rest, your exhaustion level, if any, is decreased by 1.
I will never play a Berserker again without taking a level of Ranger. Never, ever.
Yeah.
It's so good. So far, there are great enhancements to the Ranger. There are replacements, I should say. Those are all amazing. Favorite enemy? Oh, it gets better.
So I don't know how I feel about this one. Favorite foe, which replaces your favorite enemy. You can call on your bond with nature to mark a creature as your favorite enemy for a time. You know the Hunter's Mark spell, and wisdom is your spellcasting modifier for it. You can use it a certain number of times without expending a spell slot and without requiring concentration. A number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum once. You gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. When you gain the spellcasting feature at 2nd level, Hunter's Mark doesn't count against the number of Ranger spells you know.
So let's unpack this one a little bit. There's a lot going on. 1, free spell known. They don't get as many. Free castings up to your wisdom modifier. This does a couple things. 1, it lets you to cast that spell more often, frees up your other spells for cool exploration stuff. I love that.
Yeah.
It actually doubles down the fact that Ranger is a wisdom-based character class, making the Ranger a very stat-heavy class. It has always been, but when we look at these last 2 abilities, you're going to really want that higher wisdom to capitalize, and we're not even done yet.
Yeah.
And doing something in the game that pretty much nobody can do, casting a concentration spell without concentrating, is huge. This is really useful, though, especially for the Beastmaster, because Hunter's Mark loses a lot of value to the Beastmaster because your Beast Companion is the weapon, but you don't get to use your Hunter's Mark damage on it. So when you have limited resources, that becomes like, do I take this or not?
Right. So, this is great. I think it's really, really powerful. This is just your 1st level replacements.
Yes, level, and that is the one problem that I'm seeing is how early that you're getting this stuff because, like you said, you just take a level dip and you're getting such cool things.
So let's unpack a little bit further using your example. Hunter's Mark without requiring concentration.
I'm a barbarian.
You're
I'm a
barbarian.
berserker.
You berserk. You cast the spell. You berserk, and you're getting your Hunter's Mark damage without the need to concentrate.
Yes, and that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up. I'm glad you remembered too.
So that unpacks with just a single level dip. Being able to grab tireless. Going with a wood elf ranger, being able to start off with a 40 climb, swim, and walking speed right at level 1. You're better than just about anything else that's out there, if not better than everything else. There's so much here.
And it's all for a level dip, so that's where it's problematic. Hopefully Wizards will address it. I think they will. You get a spell casting focus. It's same as the druidic focuses. No big deal. And we also have another replacement ability, primal awareness.
Well, before we get into that, let's take a look. Rangers didn't have the ability to use a focus before.
No, component pouch.
They had to use a component pouch, which means now if you're actively going to choose to kind of go a little bit more spellcastery with your ranger, you have got the capacity to get a magic item that is a focus to give you those enhancements to your attack and damage rolls. And I think that's something that's great that wasn't there before. And there is enough ranger spells out there that function in that capacity that I feel this is needed. So I'm very much in favor of this.
And with all the free castings you're getting, now you can focus more on spells, which kind of brings us to the primal awareness, which is a replacement for primeval awareness. You can focus your awareness through the interconnections of nature. You learn additional spells when you reach certain levels in this class if you don't already know them, as shown on the primal awareness table. These spells don't count against the number of ranger spells you know. So now we're getting a lot more spells. We're getting 2 spells for the first 2 levels because we're getting Detect Magic, Speak with Animals.
You get Beast Sense and Locate Animals at 5th.
9th is Speak with Plants.
Locate Creature at 13th.
And 17, Commune with Nature.
And the great part about all of these spells is you get to cast them once a day without expending a spell slot.
Yes, which is huge. So you basically by the end you've added 7 spells to your spells known when you've already had a limited number before, but you also 7 castings. And like if you're going heavy and you're maxing out your wisdom, that's a 20. There's Hunter's Mark 5 times.
Yeah,
it's 14 castings. That's not insignificant.
So that is something to take away from this, and I really feel that they've listened to the complaints out there about how Ranger is weak, and
so they're going to put this out there. They're going to play test it, and then we're going to see some version of this pulled back. Is my guess.
Yeah, I would imagine the way I would do this with 7 spells here. I would say that you could do a number of free castings, maybe equal to your wisdom modifier, to tie it back into that from this particular selection, and it's how you choose to do it. But it definitely and you could be like, oh well, I'm going to use Speak with Animals multiple times or Speak with Plants multiple times rather than limit it to once each here. I think that would definitely be a stronger go-to.
We'll have to see what they come up with. I'm definitely curious. I like what they're doing. We still have more, though. We're not done with the range.
Yeah.
We got another replacement, and that is Fade Away, and it replaces Hide in Plain Sight.
So basically, you can use a bonus action to become invisible for a round until the start of your next turn. Once you do this, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. You and all of your equipment just pop. It's pretty cool. You're not casting a spell, so there's no concentration on this thing here. There's certainly a number of ways that this is going to be useful. And it's better than Hide in Plain Sight because you literally just vanish.
Now we have, probably one of the biggest things, and this is the one I think most of us are looking for, and that is the fix to the Beastmaster. This enhances the Ranger's Companion. So as it is in the player's handbook, does not change. The only area that I find that Beast Companion really lags behind is one, shared actions, and two is hit points, right? Everything else, the Beast Companion is actually really good at because it's getting your proficiency modifier to everything: armor class, saving throw, skill checks, damage to attack. Well, that doesn't change, but what we're seeing here is we're going to get some cool new Beast Companions.
All right, so I'm not going to go through and read everything here because it's really long. But essentially what it means is you're going to get to make a choice whether you're getting a beast of air or you're getting a beast of earth. And essentially it's whether you want something that's got a flying speed with proficiencies in dex, con, and wisdom, and skill proficiencies in perception and stealth with flyby, or whether you want a beast of earth which has got a climb or a swim speed and then has dex, con, and wisdom, perception, and stealth. Also, I guess those things are kind of the same. But then this, instead of flyby, it's got charge. And with both of them, they have Primal Rebirth. And it says if the beast has died within the last hour, you can use your action to touch it and expend a first level spell slot of first level or higher, and the beast returns to life after 1 minute with all its hit points restored.
Which is, that's great, that's important. But here's the thing that really fixes I want to point out the things that really fix the Beastmaster, right?
Sure.
Ready Companion. As a bonus action, you command the beast to make a maul attack or hide. And, the air, that's for the earth. The air one has something similar. So basically now it's just adding a bonus, using your bonus action, add another attack into the mix.
Yeah, it's basically whether it does a shred or a maul. Everything else is the same. It basically it gets an attack with your bonus action.
And here's the other point that's really important, and this feast fixed the Beast Companion in my opinion. Hit points equal to the Beast's Constitution modifier plus your Wisdom modifier plus 5 times your Ranger level. So now they have hit points that are on par with your level, and they can last more than a single round of combat and take damage and soak damage and not go away right away.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty nice. You've got a lot building in here. It's adding that wisdom to it. There's lore and stuff about the creature that you're selecting is something special. It is more than just, hey, I happen to find something that's really cool. And I like that they built that in here and took the time to give us those couple paragraphs. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you get into it. It's too much to read here. We're already pretty long. So
all right, Rogue. I feel like they just throw this one in there. Like, I guess we got to give Rogue something. I mean, the Rogue class doesn't need anything.
No, it doesn't, and I'm really against this one.
So if you think about it, and you think about the Rogue, you're like, what does the Rogue really need? I know more ways to sneak attack because it's so hard to sneak attack as it is. So they get cutting action aim.
So basically, it enhances your cutting action. You can use your cutting action as opposed to, all the other things you can aim, which is going to give you advantage on your attack roll. Therefore, if you've got advantage, you can sneak. I've watched a number of streamed games, and I've seen far more at other people's table than tables that I've played at, where the DM has done things to say, oh, no, you're not getting the sneak as often as, it would happen, say, at, my table. But I plan my encounters assuming that the rogue is going to find a way to get to get sneak attack.
It's safe to say they pretty much get to sneak almost every round. Very rarely does something happen.
So
and then it comes down to tactics and positioning. So if a rogue is doing things and they're not getting their sneak attack, then the party has not synergized
properly
their tactics very well.
So with this one, I really don't like it. It's the only thing that they're adding for the rogue, and as Dave says, they had to give something to the rogue, but I'm very much against this one, and I'm certain there's people out there who are going to crucify me for it, but I'm going to be honest, I don't like it. I don't think the rogue needs it. I think the rogue is the strongest class in the game. It's really powerful.
So now we got Sorcerer. We went over the spell options that they get, which are cool. But then you also get Font of Magic options. This is Hansen's Font of Magic. The weird thing about, Font of Magic, you have very limited things you can do with it when you first get it because you have sorcery points. There's no point in making more sorcery points at that point with your spell slots, but you can get some extra castings. But now you have some other things. Empower and Reserves. When you make an ability check on your turn, you can spend 2 sorcery points to gain advantage on the check.
Imbuing touch is an action. You can touch one non-magical weapon and spend 2 sorcery points to imbue it with magic for 1 minute for the duration. The weapon is considered magical for the purpose of overcoming immunity and resistance to non-magical attacks.
It's a weird one for the sorcerer, but why not? They can help out their party with it. Sorcerer's Fortitude. As an action, you can spend a number of sorcery points, roll a d4 for each point you expend it. You gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the total roll. We got things we can do with our sorcery points.
I like the fact that you now have options here. Sorcerer's Fortitude, there's no duration. So, like, all right, I'm about to go to bed. All right, I just gained, 10d4 temporary hit points until they wear out.
Yeah, why would you not?
So that it has the ability to be abused.
So I'm going to dump all 20.
Well,
20 die 4.
20 die 4, we're gonna geez, gotta find a way to use them. Oh.
Yeah, so we get meta magic options. I actually love these. I like the fact that more of these we get, the more different our sorcerers are going to be from each other.
I would agree. So all of this it enhances your meta magic just by giving you some new choices. We start off first with Elemental Spell. When you cast a spell that deals a type of damage from the following list, you can spend 1 sorcery point to change that damage type from one to the other. So it's got to do Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. And then you could swap that type out for another. So instead of casting Fireball, you could cast Lightning Ball or Cold Ball or Acid Ball just by expending 1 sorcery point.
Thunderball. Yeah, so that's cool. It's an option. I think our table is an option we wanted. It was an earlier edition, so it's a cool thing. It's also maybe a little bit of bringing back the Lore Master from one of the earlier UAs.
Absolutely.
Seeking Spell. When you cast a spell that requires you to make a spell attack roll that forces the target to make a dexterity saving throw, you can spend 1 sorcery point to ignore the effect of half and 3/4 cover. I mean, it's an option that's cool. I don't see this one getting picked very often. Spell Sniper would serve you way better.
I would agree. But, there's times that, maybe the DM is more, tactical in their battles than, what we happen to do. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's a strong choice.
Yeah, it's not as good as something, say, Unerring Spell.
Unerring Spell, if you make an attack roll for a spell and miss, you can expend 2 sorcery points to re-roll the attack roll. You have to use the second roll. You can use it even if you have already used a different meta magic option during the casting of the spell. This
is nice. You've already invested with meta magic, and you botched the roll. Why would you not spend 2 sorcery points to try again?
So what I see here, and every once in a while I try to dive into what does this look like on, like, what the character sees, and it's like, okay, I go to launch, say, my Fireball, whatever, and it starts to go askew, and you really need that to hit because whatever. So you reach out and you add more magic and just kind of magically push it, to try again. So I like that. I think it's fun. All right, so we finished up with Sorcerer. Now we're going to look at Warlock, and we already talked about the spellcasting versatility. But we also have some other new things that we get.
So we get a bunch of invocations. Many of them have to do with the new Warlock pack boon we get as well,
which I'm happy about. I actually really like that.
So we get a bunch of them. We'll pick out a couple that are that we think are really good, because there's also some ones I find to be rather lame.
All right, so I like Chainmaster's Fury as a bonus action. You can command your familiar to make 1 attack. Gives you something new to do as your Pact of the Chain.
Well, it's good to know that one of the ones I think is lame you like. So, that's that one I think is. I don't know, you're trading invocation to get an extra attack from your familiar. Take a point of damage? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you've got, a better familiar, so like a pseudo dragon or something that's got a poison attack.
Maybe the imp, but for an invocation, I don't really like it. But you know what? You can play it however you want. But I'm going to go with Eldritch Armor.
I figured that was where you were going to go.
Pact of the Blade feature. As an action, you can touch a suit of armor that isn't being worn or carried by anyone and instantly don it, providing you aren't wearing armor already. You are proficient with the suit of armor until removed. The thing that really got me about this ability, first of all, I was like, oh, this is really cool. You can instantly put armor on. And I thought that was the cool part. Then I reread it and go, oh, you're proficient with that suit of armor. It doesn't matter what it is, what proficiency you have. Plate map, boom, proficient. So, for the cost of the invocation, you're proficient. At first, I was like, Tensor's Transformation, you're a wizard, 3 levels of Warlock, and now all of a sudden you can finally put that suit of armor on, without running out of your Tensor's Transformation. It finally works, but it actually doesn't matter because you're proficient with the armor so it means nothing. But it is still a cool way to just put a suit of armor on and be proficient.
And, some of our, off-camera talks, like, you could totally be like, okay, well, I'm adding this as a thief. You reach your hand through the window, you touch the armor, you're now wearing it, and you run. That could, totally be a thing.
So there's also 2 invocations in here that kind of speak to true name magic. Both of them are either someone or you put a name in the book, and now you have a connection to them.
So Far Scribe and Gift of the Protectors. I really like these ones. One allows you to instantly teleport to them or they to you. And the other one is if they go down, you can have them be, instead of at 0, at 1 instead. And it only happens once per long rest. But, it's still pretty awesome. And you can have a number of names in your book for each of these invocations equal to your charisma modifier. So it's only going to be up to, 5 if you max it out. But still, it's really potent. I like both of these. And, knowing that I've got a Warlock in my game, I'm guessing that he's going to be asking tonight, like, hey, can I use these?
So we get a pack boon option as well. Pack of the Talisman. Your patron gives you a special amulet and talisman that can aid you or anyone else who wears it when the need is great. When the wearer makes an ability check with a skill in which they lack proficiency, they add a d4 to the roll. If you lose the talisman, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony and receive a replacement from the patron. The ceremony can be performed during a short or long rest, and it destroys the previous amulet. The talisman turns to ash when you die. So what this pack boon does, it actually creates a warlock that is a buffing warlock. Most warlocks have no ability to buff others. They buff themselves, right, or they can debuff others, right? But the talisman actually, if you go back through and look at those invocations, many of them are buffs or for your allies or help you and your allies. So that's kind of cool. It's a different take on the warlock.
I like I said, I really like this particular warlock. And as I read this one, the ceremony is just, your patron berating you for an hour. Like you're supplicating yourself, like, I'm sorry, I lost it. And they're reading you the riot act of how could you do this? I took my time, I selected you, and you go and lose this talisman, blah, 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 blah. And if you can stand that for an hour, then you get your new amulet back.
And lastly, we have the wizard. The wizard really doesn't get anything other than the cantrip versatility. And
they get a couple of spells.
The least amount of anybody. So yeah. The wizard gets the least amount of love.
I thought enhanceability was already on the wizard list, but whatever. It's four spells and cantrip versatility. It's it's blasé to say to say the least.
Compared to some of the others. Overall, this was great. This looks like we're going to Player's Handbook 2, which is going to be an options book. It's not going to replace anything. It's not going to be, these are considered raw from what Jeremy Crawford was saying. I'm not saying, he didn't say they're doing a Player's Handbook 2. I'm surmising some kind of second Player's Handbook.
Player's Handbook 2 or Skills and Powers.
Skills and Powers from AD&D, where they're going to give you a bunch of options that you can add to the game or not, as the case may be. It's going to be a buffet, pick and choose kind of thing. Each group will have to decide. More options is good. I generally hate anything that makes everything more generic. That was my big beef with the 4th edition. Everything kind of felt the same. So that's why I don't like keep adding to the to the spell list so it's like we just have one big giant one. I like things that seem kind of themed towards that class. But mostly I like this UA. There's a lot of valuable stuff to add to your game from in here.
Yeah, very very little that I would say negative about. You've already heard a couple of my complaints, but generally I agree with Dave. It's playtest. Most of it I give a big thumbs up to, and I like to see that they're finally fixing some of the big problems.
Yes. But before we head out, this has been a long one. Thanks for hanging out with us. Go check out that promo code from Humblewood take a look at the deck of many, and let me take a moment to invite you to join Nerdarchy, the adventuring party over on Patreon. What can I expect there, Ted?
We're creating products for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that both players and DMs alike can drop right into their game.
We do monthly giveaways, and our patrons are automatically entered.
We do weekly hangouts with our patrons and more.
So quest on down to the description, join the Nerdarchy adventuring party. Until next time,
Stay nerdy.